I feel very emotional because I am connected to this bookshop for 3 decades now. I discovered it during the third year of my studies here in London. That's where I studied, and I have been coming here ever since. And many of the books that I bought from this bookshop have been very influential to my life. And I would never have thought that I would be presenting my book here one day. And yeah, it's a very special honor. Yeah, the book is about the philosophy of travel. And I am from Cyprus. At the age of 35, I had a severe midlife crisis. I decided to leave the business world. I was in the media for 10 years. I was a manager there. I sold everything, and I decided to delve into the mystery and the meaning of life. I retreated for 4 or 5 years, and then I left my country, and slowly, I ended up traveling around the world for 6.5 years. And at the end of my journey, I had a lot of ideas that I was writing in my diary of ideas that I gathered together. I typed them. I completed some unfinished ideas. I put them down on the floor, and I allowed a book to organically grow out of those papers. So my book is organic, which is very fashionable. I expand on the inner journey a little bit, of course. I would like to say a few things about the outer journey. And I will start with how I start my book, the first chapter of the book. Travel, long-term travel, is the ultimate university. It brings together theory and practice and harmonizes knowledge with life. We go to school for 16 years, 18 years, university and so on, and we obtain knowledge. But this knowledge is mostly theoretical. We read about animals and plants and the history of nations and so on. But we never really connect them to life. I think that travel is the ultimate university because it connects all theoretical and practical knowledge with life itself. And when I say life, it's with a capital L, the whole of life. So the knowledge that you obtain when you travel is carved on your soul, and it stays with you forever. The travel is also the ultimate university because it is multidimensional. It touches all branches of knowledge. So you learn about history, you live the history. You go to Athens, you go to Rome, and you walk on the paths of history. You also bring together geography and biology and psychology and sociology. You hear about the Chinese, you see about you see the Chinese on television, but you never really interact with them unless you go to China. So this is the most important thing of travel, and because of that, you are being transformed. While you move outside into the world, you are being transformed inwards. And this inner transformation of travel is the most important thing of travel. And this is what constitutes the ultimate university. And now I'm going to speak about how travel transforms you inwards and what are the geography of this transformation. And I would like to start by reading you a small excerpt from the book. It's from the chapter, The Travel Mode of Being, in the chapter, The Philosophy of Travel. And it's about the relationship between traveling and being a hermit at the same time. So it might be strange to compare the life of a world traveler who is on the move and interacting with thousands of people with the life of a spiritual hermit. Yet paradoxically, the two have more in common than meets the eye. Just as a hermit, the world traveler is alone, in quotation marks, most of the time. Not in the ordinary sense of the word, for he is almost always surrounded by people. However, even while he interacts with the world, he does so more as a student of life rather than as a participant in the everyday socializing in which the majority of humanity is immersed. Thus, although the traveler is fully in the world, he is not of the world. His interactions have the character of those of an explorer, and they do not really take him out of this state of aloneness. But time-wise, these interactions are only part of his life. When not traveling and interacting with people, he studies, he delves deep into cultures. Then he has to gather all his experiences, make sense of them, like a hermit does, and find the meaning, the inner meaning of these experiences. And then he has to allow all these things, he has to integrate all these things and allow them to transform him into another person. The outer journey turns out to be an instrument that serves the much more important and central inner journey. The dichotomy of the outer and inner journey is mirrored in two concepts that I found can give us a better idea of what I'm talking about: the dichotomy between doing and becoming. Sedentary life is immersed in doing. We are doing things. We do shopping, we do work, we run, do errands, and so on. So in everyday sedentary normal life, we are immersed in this active life of doing things. However, travel life is not like that. It pertains to what I call another mode of being. It pertains to the mode of becoming. A traveler need do nothing. He can sit all day long on a bench and watch the people pass by. Let's take the example of a beautiful bench in Chengdu in the Sichuan province of China, where you can sit and watch the Chinese have fun in the park. It's a wonderful thing, how they interact, how they play, how they deal with their kids, their parents, and so on. And let's say you sit there for an hour. After this hour, during which you absolutely did nothing, you are not the same person. Something changed within you. It's a very small thing, but it has an additive effect over a long period of time when you travel. If you want to sit down and describe what you've learned during this hour, it might take 2 hours to actually put it down on paper. I remember once I decided to sit down and document my first day in Australia. It took me 3 hours to just write down on paper what I did, and maybe I would take 10 hours to describe what I learned during this day. So it's as if time expands. And so let me come back to the doing and the becoming. When you are in this mode of becoming, you are being changed. And this is the difference between the mode of doing and the becoming. And let me say, let us see now, what are the main, what is the geography of this mode of becoming? What constitutes its main elements? There are many elements. I mean, the way you are being transformed when you travel, it's so many things. You interact with people, you learn many new things, you have difficulties, you learn to negotiate, you learn to find your way to deal with things you never dealt with before. All these things have big effect on you. But if I were to try and distill what is the important elements that are common in all these things, I would concentrate on 4 things. And these are the 4 important elements of the mode of becoming. The one is being in the present moment, which, as you know, has become already very popular with the writings of Eckhart Tolle, who, by the way, spoke here also. And being in the present moment, it has been an ancient thing. You know, it starts from Buddhism and the Vedanta and so on. Being focused, being attentive, being mindful. And you know that, I don't need to expand on that. But I would say that it's related to the second concept, which is very important, that of what I call aliveness with a capital A. The more you are in the present moment, the more you are in life. So you are more alive, as in when we say, I feel very alive today. It's not like you are in some rapture or having a peak experience or anything. But this aliveness we have all experienced. We experience it without striving for it when a dangerous situation appears, you know, a child passes in front of your car and immediately all your senses, you have to push the brakes and so on. But it also happens when you create something. I mean, a musician, an artist, a piano player, when he's playing his piano, he's completely immersed in the now, and he's constantly alive. So aliveness is this second element. The third element is being open. This is actually the most difficult, because we carry with us all these impedimenta of our previous life. We have all these preconceived ideas about what the Chinese, how the Chinese behave, what is ancient Rome, what is Latin America, what are the favelas, and so on. But things are not like usually how we think they are. They are very different. And in order to approach them with fresh eyes, you have to put aside everything you know. And you have to be open, open to surprise, open to the new, open to things that you don't understand, so that you need to study and understand them. I mean, for example, let's take one example from the South Home of Ethiopia. When you see men, teenage men, whipping their future wives, you think that this is an expression of male chauvinism and male brutality, but it's not. The women are willing participants in their own flagellation, because they want to show that they are strong. Like the man wants to show that he's above the woman wants to show that she deserves the man who is strong and powerful. So you must put aside everything you know. And that's the openness. And the fourth element that is important in the mode of becoming is freedom. You have the absolute freedom to do anything you want to do when you travel. You have the freedom to stay for the rest of your life in Bolivia because you liked it, or because you fell in love with a Bolivian lady. You have the freedom to stop your journey and come back home at any moment. You have the freedom to linger longer at a place you like, or leave a place that didn't speak to you. And this absolute freedom is something we lose, I like to say, at around the age of 4 or 5, when our mother starts calling us back home before 8 o'clock. This freedom that I felt very strongly during the first 2 years of my life is something that is worth traveling. And in order to experience this absolute freedom, it has to be a long-term travel. You don't experience that when you do 10 days round of Central Europe. I don't know how people can see Central Europe in 10 days. So that's the last element. And I would like to finish by bringing all these things together and relate them. And yeah, so why is the mode of becoming important? Actually, they are both important. We need to do. We are here in life, you know. We are in this bookshop. The karma yoga is probably the highest yoga, the yoga of works. But in the modern world, we have to redress the balance between the doing and the becoming. So I'm taking a little bit the side of the becoming in order to redress the balance, not necessarily because it has primacy, although it may have primacy, temporal primacy. It comes before the doing. And let me explain what I mean. Becoming requires doing, while doing depends on the depth of the becoming for whatever it creates. In our modern world, preoccupied and obsessed with doing, it is good once in a while to redress the balance. And if we were to take the side of becoming, if only for a moment, and give it primacy, we could say the following. And this is very important. In order to do anything of value, one must first become able to do it. It is in this sense that becoming is primary and doing secondary. It is who you are that creates what you do. The greatest people among us, whom we admire and venerate, first set out to become themselves. By becoming themselves, their doing became the fruition or expression of who they were. So Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is Beethoven. His symphony is the real-life expression of his invisible becoming that preceded the composition. It is in this sense that we may say in the end that Beethoven became his Ninth Symphony, Magellan became his journey, Socrates, Confucius, the Buddha, Jesus became their teachings. What they did in their lives was simply the living expression of who they first became. So I will leave you with try to bring more becoming into your doing. And if it's difficult to do it in London, in the tube, try to travel for 3 weeks of more around the world to enter into this mode of becoming without trying, without needing to do any yoga or any exercises or anything. Thank you very much. I met Jane, that's in the preface of the book, during the 3rd day of my journey, and she joined me during the last 2 years and 8 months. So I was alone for about 4 years, and for 2.5 years, the last 2.5 years of the journey, I traveled with my partner Jane, who is still my partner. And the question is whether the journey would have been different. Well, the simple answer is I don't know. Jane definitely had an influence on me, especially after the 4th year when I was starting to feel very tired. I suffered from accumulating fatigue. And she helped me, she stayed with me for 2 months in Bali, and she acted, you know, like in the movie The English Patient, and that's where we bonded actually. And then she left, and then we decided to travel together. So I think she helped me last longer. Probably would have been, yeah, I got very tired after 4 years because it's not so much the physical fatigue as the mental fatigue to absorb all these things. I call it the process of integration. It's so many things that your mind somehow collapses. And especially after I visited some tribes in the Solomon Islands and in the Pacific, let's say in Papua New Guinea, in the Pacific, and I lived with them, and I went into the stone age of humanity. There were so many things to absorb that somehow my mind collapsed, and I needed 2 months to rejuvenate my energies, my mental energies. Yes, that's a good question. Actually, 35 is just when it ought to begin. Jung says, who studied that, it begins from 35 to 35. Actually, the first thing I did when I retreated after my midlife crisis was to study the works of Carl Jung, who is still the only person who has studied this phenomenon. Okay, now you have Jungian psychologists who delve deeper into that. But he helped me. He gave me the map to understand what was going on. I was completely lost. I think when I started traveling around the world, let's say 5 or 6 years later, I was completely out of this. I felt like I was finding my path again. So just a little bit before the beginning of the journey, actually. I retreated, then I traveled a little bit in Europe for 2 years. I studied everything I could. I dealt with a lot of internal struggles and so on. And at the beginning of the journey, I think I started feeling quite good. And then it all started flowing, and you entered into that beautiful flow of the journey, and it was magical. Actually, almost. Yes, I got twice. I used to have a lot of fights with taxi drivers. Everybody has a curse in this life. My curse is the taxi drivers. And sometimes, you know, I held my ground. And they said, I call the policeman, call the policeman. And they took me to a police station. I said, no, he's a big thief. He took me around and he charged 10 times more and so on. But these things are quite unique, actually. That's why I remember them, because you learn so many new things. I wanted to go to a police station in Brazil to see what's going to happen. Actually, the policemen all over the world, they take...
That's where I'm from, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, in most places around the world, usually the policemen, you know, take the side of the tourist. In Brazil, I don't know, it was the carnival or something, and they thought all these, Europeans with a lot of money, you know. And the policemen, it was kind of theater absurda, you know. And they were all against me, the policemen too. They wanted me to pay. I said, no, put me in prison. They realized I was more crazy than them. The Greek is usually more crazy than everybody else. So they let me go. It's a normal life. Like everywhere else in the world, people live a normal life. Only in war zones. But when you travel, you avoid war zones. Yes. Yeah, exactly. He was saying about the favelas that it's not dangerous, and exactly that's what I meant when I said earlier that it's not how you imagine things to be. Okay. Okay. How many times did I get lost during my travels? There's one particular incident I remember. You know, in China, when I arrived very late at the city, I would get the taxi, they are very cheap there, and I would go around with him searching for hotels. So I checked in a hotel, it was around 10, 11, I was very hungry, I went out to have some street food, and then I realized that I didn't take the card of the hotel, I didn't know the name of the hotel, and I didn't know where to go. So I had checked in the hotel, where the hell is the hotel, what's the name of the hotel? But I have good visual memory. So what I did is I found another taxi driver and I repeated all the stops from the train station that I had done earlier, and finally I found it. I spent an hour. But there I got scared. I said, oh my God, what happens now? I mean, there are 300 hotels. Yeah, that's one of the few times I got lost. Other times, you know, people always help you and you find your way. I was going to speak about that, but we have time limits here. Do we have some more time? Okay. Yeah, well, yes, we can. Let's take the underground station. You are in a train. How can you apply some of these principles? The openness. You usually don't speak to people on the train. But you know, next to you, there might be the next Einstein. And he will come in, he will go, and you sat next to the next Einstein, or a great writer, or a great musician, or a great composer. You will never know that. So this curiosity, this openness to meet new people, to smile at, and if he wants to interact, he will interact, and sometimes you can start first. And I wrote an article, I write a blog, it's called Monumental Encounters. Actually, there's one here in the audience. Richard Henley, whom I met, you see, is one of the friends I made during my journey, and we are still friends 10 years later. I met him in New Zealand. I was searching for an apartment to rent for a month because I was very tired, and I didn't want to stay in a hotel for a month. And I just took a boat, and there were some islands. I said, I want to go stay on one of those islands in Auckland. And on the way back, I saw this guy, started chatting with him. And I told him I'm from Cyprus. He said, my father is in Cyprus. Where in Cyprus? In this village. That's where I used to live. What the hell is going on here? And then he told me he's a Buddhist. I said, I study Buddhism. And I like the writings of Dilko Khenchen Rinpoche, whom I bought here, the books actually. And he said, I'm a disciple of this school of Buddhism. Really? Yeah, and you know, one of his pupils is going to give a lecture in Australia. In Australia, that's when? In 2 months. I will be in Australia in 2 months. I'll go there. I mean, all these things in 5 minutes. And we became good friends, and we are friends ever since. So if I had not spoken with him, he wouldn't be here today. And this is the openness, and the other, being in the present moment. So when you are in the tube, try to be there. Not just read your books or think about the problems at work on your way there, or the problems at home, or family problems when you return. Try to be at the tube. And I think this is what Eckhart Tolle teaches also, and that's a great teaching actually, yes. Yes, the question is, how do you deal with the suffering in the world, and how do you deal with the poverty and the unpleasant things of the world? And you know what? I have a chapter that has exactly that title, and it's called How to Deal with the Unpleasant Realities and Struggle of the World as a Traveler. So, difficulties, struggles, and the unpleasant realities of the world. So you have to read the chapter, my friend. I don't have time to expand, and actually there's a subheading, The Ugly and Unpleasant Realities of the World, which is what you just mentioned. And yeah. For those who couldn't hear it, when you started your journey, did you think in terms of the becoming and the doing, or is it something you discovered later on? No, it's something I discovered later on. I realized that after a year or so, after 2 years, I was behaving differently. I would catch myself saying different things, speaking to my parents over the phone in a different manner, some people say, hey, you've changed, what are these things you're talking about, you know, and so on. And slowly, slowly, I realized that I was being transformed internally, slowly, slowly, but steadily. And then I tried to delve deeper into the processes that were going into my soul, and I discovered this, you know, in my previous life I was doing things all day, I was busy, now I'm different, and slowly, slowly I developed these ideas, you know, like, you know, to have or to be. After one year in Latin America, you know, I'm going to Mexico, my mother was having a heart attack, where are you going to, they killed someone a year ago there, a tourist, and blah, blah. And I realized that all these fears are unfounded. I mean, it's so rare that somebody, a visitor, will be killed in any country that it becomes world news. I mean, how many people travel every year? Billions of people in one. You know, it's the same like planes. We concentrate on the plane that had a crash, but we forget the millions of planes that fly every day. So people concentrate, and unfortunately many travel guides, on the dangers and annoyances of travel. But this never happened. Maybe when you travel for 10 days with a bus, an annoyance might happen because they are waiting there for you, all this, you know. But when over the long period of time, if you have 2 or 3 annoyances a year, they vanish. They become zero because they are so insignificant in your journey that they are. And actually, some of them, they are quite interesting. If somebody tries to steal you and you have to do something about it, you remember it. So, yeah, the world. And let me finish with that. The world, if an extraterrestrial would visit the Earth, what would he say about us? He would say that the human species is a very friendly species, open-hearted, polite, helpful, hospitable. These are the main characteristics of 99.99% of humanity. The criminals and the thieves are an insignificant part of this world. Even the wars are a very small part of the totality of time of history. So we live in a safe world, we are good people, most of us. And this is what I experienced in the world. Humanity is a good species. And if we one day find extraterrestrials, we will be, trust me, one of the best species in the galaxy. Thank you.